Late-night adult stories, sexual desire, love of lust. Part 1, arrival and childhood flashback. I steer my aged sedan down the narrow country road, morning mist curling around the dew-drenched strawberry fields like a silent sea of green. A cool breeze carries the faint scent of ripening berries and moist earth into my open window. Every mile brings me closer to the grand lakeside mansion that will be my home for the foreseeable future, and farther from the girl I once was. As I pass under the wrought iron gates, I recall the first time I ever tasted the freedom of work. I was 12 years old, my small hands trembling around the stem of a lush strawberry in those very fields. My mother's gentle voice guided me. "Steady now, Mary. Pick the ripest ones." The sun beat down mercilessly, turning our shirts slick with sweat. Yet my heart swelled with pride when I handed her basket after basket of scarlet fruit. In those moments, I tasted hope more than sugar. I hoped that one day I might rise above the quiet struggles of our cramped cottage. Now the mansion's turrets loom like silent sentinels over the glassy water. I inhaled deeply, pushing that memory aside, bracing myself for the life ahead. The gravel crunches under my tires as I enter the circular drive, flanked by sculpted hedges and ancient oaks. The front door, carved from dark mahogany, swings open to reveal a vast foyer. Sunlight streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, dancing across polished marble floors. A chandelier of hand-cut crystals scatters prismatic light in every direction. To my left, a grand piano draped in white linen hints at whispered melodies. To my right, a porcelain tea set gleams atop an antique oak sideboard. The air carries a subtle undertone of sandalwood and aged leather, an intoxicating blend of luxury and solitude. "Welcome, Mary," a deep, kindly voice offers behind me. I turn to see Mr. John, tall, silver-haired, his dark eyes crinkling in a genuine smile. He extends a hand, and I step forward, feeling both small and significant under the weight of his gaze. He leads me through the foyer, pointing out family portraits in gilded frames, ancestors with stern countenances, a young couple dancing in a ballroom, children chasing summer shadows. Each painting speaks of legacy and quiet expectation. I nod, absorbing his words, though a pang of uncertainty lingers in my chest. As I follow him down a corridor lined with Persian rugs, I remind myself of my childhood promise. I left behind fields of strawberries and the ache of survival. Now I must embrace this new world, one of marble, crystal, and whispered histories, and discover if it can offer the freedom and perhaps the belonging that once seemed so impossible. Part 2, House Tour and First Impressions. I stepped through the threshold of the mahogany double doors and into a world I had only dared imagine. The foyer yawned before me in opulent silence, its marble floors cool beneath my shoes, gleaming like a frozen lake under the soft radiance of 1,000 crystal prisms. Above, the grand chandelier, a constellation of cut glass, refracted light into dancing rainbows across the vaulted ceiling. The very air felt charged, as if the house itself were holding its breath, waiting for my reaction. Mr. John stood beside me, tall and composed in a charcoal suit that whispered of old money and unspoken tradition. His silver hair caught the chandelier's glow, haloing his head like an age-old patriarch. He guided me with a courteous nod and a gentle sweep of his arm. "Welcome home, Mary," he said, voice velvety and resonant. I swallowed, tasting disbelief on my tongue. "Thank you, Mr. John," I managed, though my voice trembled with more than gratitude. It quivered with the dizzying thrill of stepping into wealth so absolute. We began our tour at the center of the foyer. To my left, an antique sideboard of mahogany and mother-of-pearl stood against the wall. Its surface held a porcelain tea set, delicate cups rimmed with gold filigree, each saucer etched with a blossoming cherry tree. I imagine afternoon connoisseurs gathering here for Earl Grey and whispered confidences. "Every piece has a story," John murmured. He lifted the lid of a sugar bowl. "This set came from an estate in England. My grandmother prized it above all her possessions." My gaze traced the sideboard's inlays, tiny figures of horses and carriages hidden among swirling vines. My fingers itched to run along the polished wood, to feel the craftsmanship that had endured generations. On the opposite wall hung a vast oil painting of a Tuscan vineyard at sunset. Golden vines stretched toward a crimson sky, and in the distance, a cypress tree stood sentinel. The canvas seemed to glow from within, as though the sun itself refused to let the horizon grow dark. "That was painted by my grandfather," John said, approaching. He rested a hand lightly on the gilded frame. "He captured the warmth of summer evenings. I hope it brings you the same sense of comfort." I nodded, my heart fluttering. Comfort, a single word, but here it felt like a promise, and perhaps a warning of how deeply I might come to desire this place. John led me onward to the sweeping staircase. Its balusters were wrought iron, twisted into organic shapes that resembled vines climbing toward the heavens. The handrail, carved from polished walnut, curved under my palm like a familiar embrace. Each step was carpeted in a plush runner of deep burgundy, muted gold patterns dancing across its surface. "Upstairs, you'll find your quarters," he explained. 3 rooms along the east wing. Light in the morning, privacy in the evening. The prospect both calmed and unsettled me. Light in the morning, perfect for preparing breakfast. Privacy in the evening, perfect for keeping secrets. We paused at the top of the stairs, where a long corridor stretched before us. Tall windows lined one side, their glass panes divided by slender muntins into geometric patterns. Pale sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, washing the hallway in a quiet alabaster glow. On the other side, a series of portraits recounted the family lineage, stern-faced ancestors in powdered wigs, regal women draped in silks, children stiff in formal attire. I felt their eyes upon me, assessing, curious. Was I worthy of this inheritance, even as a mere housekeeper? The weight of their scrutiny pressed against my spine, reminding me that here, every gesture mattered. Mr. John paused before a small writing desk and set against the wall. The desk was a marvel of marquetry, its surface composed of thousands of wood veneers forming elaborate floral motifs. A single quill rested in an inkpot beside a stack of parchment. "This is where my father wrote his letters home during the war," John whispered, as though speaking aloud would break a spell. "He believed words could bridge oceans." I brushed a fingertip along the desk's edge, feeling the subtle ridges of the inlaid design. Words, yes, I understood that longing. I had left behind my own motherland in search of a bridge to something more. Our tour wound down through a drawing room that might have been lifted from a Venetian palace. Tall arched windows faced the lake, emerald velvet drapes tied back with tasseled cords. A marble fireplace dominated one wall, its mantel adorned with porcelain figurines, dancers frozen in mid-twirl. The furniture was arranged in intimate clusters, a gilded settee here, a pair of high-backed chairs there, each upholstered in damask that glowed softly in the lamplight. "Feel free to make yourself comfortable," John said. "This is where I read my books." I perched on the edge of a nearest chair, its seat plush beneath me. The velvet brushed my skirt as though reminding me of the contrast between my simple life and the grandeur that now surrounded me. A hush settled over the room, punctuated only by the distant lapping of lake water against stone. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence seep into my bones. In that stillness, the ache in my chest, born of longing, hope, and unarticulated desire, grew more insistent. John's voice broke the quiet. "I trust you'll find your place here." I opened my eyes and met his gaze. "I will," I said, conviction threading through my uncertainty. As we returned to the foyer, the chandelier above seemed to pulse with approving light, as if acknowledging the beginning of a new chapter. I inhaled the scent of sandalwood and old wood polish, committing it to memory. This house, this legacy, was now part of my story. And I, Mary the housekeeper, was a willing protagonist in its unfolding narrative. Part 3: Morning Rituals and Whispered Desires. Morning lights spilled across the polished marble countertops like molten gold, and the kitchen awakened around me in a gentle symphony of warmth. I inhaled deeply, savoring the mingled aromas of freshly ground coffee and the faint sweetness of vanilla croissants laid out on the porcelain plate. Sunlight filtered through lace-curtained windows, tracing delicate patterns across the oak floor. Every surface gleamed with careful attention. Copper pots hung in a neat row above the stove, and on the island, a row of crystal tumblers caught the light, prisms dancing on the walls. I moved with quiet purpose. First, I measured 2 spoonfuls of medium roast beans into the grinder, listening to the satisfying whir as they cracked open. Then I spooned sugar into a porcelain bowl, the grains slipping like tiny pearls. I arranged china cups on saucers, the one for Mr. John with a swirl of cinnamon, the one for me plain, knowing I'd stir in a splash of cream later. Steam curled from the coffee urn, as comforting as a whispered promise. As I carried the tray through the archway into the sunlit dining alcove, my footsteps on the terracotta tiles echoed in the hush. Mr. John was already seated at the round table by the window, his gaze drifting over the glass-paneled doors to the lake beyond. His posture was relaxed, but the set of his shoulders told me he had been waiting. I placed the tray before him and poured the coffee with a steady hand. "Thank you, Mary," he said, voice warm. He lifted his cup and amber light shone through the liquid. "You have a deft touch, just the way I like it." His praise was simple, almost casual, yet it struck me like sunlight through mist. I felt a flutter of pride, but beneath it stirred a restlessness I could not name. I wondered if, hidden behind his polite smile, he sensed the ache, the hunger I carried beneath my careful composure. After breakfast, I wiped down the counters and reorganized the spice rack, aligning jars of saffron, turmeric, and rosemary until the labels faced outward like soldiers at attention. I washed the dishes by hand in a deep porcelain sink, listening to the clink of china and the rush of water over my fingers. With each task, I felt Mr. John's eyes on me, observing, approving, perhaps even caring. Every gentle nod or quiet "well done" chipped away at my walls, replacing caution with a tentative trust. By mid-morning, the sun had climbed high, painting the kitchen in bright hues of cream and amber. I sat on a stool by the island for a moment, running my fingers over its smooth surface, and allowed myself a breath. In that pause, I closed my eyes and remembered the girl I once was, 12 years old, stained with berry juice, hands trembling as I gathered strawberries alongside my mother. That same trembling now coursed through me whenever I heard his praise, yet the cause had changed. It was no longer pride in a job well done, but something deeper, a restless longing I dared not admit. Mr. John returned a moment later with a folded newspaper. He offered it to me across the island. "Your break," he said, genuine concern in his gaze. I nodded, grateful for the reprieve. As I leaned against the cool marble, I watched him through the window as he poured himself another cup. Every breath he took seemed measured, deliberate, and somehow, in that ordinary act, I felt an unspoken connection grow between us. I stood in the quiet kitchen, sunlight warming my face, and realized that here, amidst the silver and the lace, the coffee and the croissants, I was no longer just a help. I was part of his world, however tenuously, and with each morning ritual, the ache within me grew more pronounced, a yearning for something beyond routine, for a closeness hinted at in his gentle words and thoughtful gestures. Subscribe and hit the bell to get updates on new story episodes.